meet my bride. Let's go for a ride in my newfangled automobile. Just where we will go, nobody knows, but it's sure a great way to feel. Behind the wheel of the speed meter steel, it's my newfangled automobile. Hello and welcome to Vintage Car History. I'm Wild Bill. The impression a car makes on a viewer can often be summed up in one word: economical, sporty, practical, luxury, all commonly used to describe cars. But for a car to be best described by the word prestige, it had better be one amazing car. And for about a decade, one of, if not the most prestigious cars made in the United States was the Matheson. So today, we're going to take a brief look at the history of that company and the man behind it. Charles Walter Matheson was born in Grand Rapids, Michigan in 1876. At the time, the city was a hotbed of the furniture industry, and his father, Alex, was a senior foreman at one of the local factories. Charles was quite outgoing, charismatic, and ambitious, and had a good mind for business. He finished high school in 1892 and went to work for the Macy Company, which manufactured roll-top desks, other office and library furnishings by mail order through magazine ads. Charles's older brother, by almost 5 years, Frank, had already been working there for a few years in accounting, managing inventory and the balance sheet. Charles himself went to work in the sales department, where he would design advertisements and arrange to rent booths at county fairs and other such festivities to promote the products to the public. He did so well at his job that by 1899 he was vice president of sales for the company. In 1901, he and his brother decided to buy themselves a car, a used Stanley. It was an early steam buggy and was difficult to start and couldn't keep a head of steam for more than a few miles of driving. Charles knew he had to do something and decided that getting into the car business himself was the answer. But not just with any car. He wanted to make the finest car in the country, if not the world. Not being an engineer himself, he reached out to an English engineer, William Hedges, to come up with a design to his exacting specifications. Hedges did, and in early 1903, the first prototype Matheson was built. Inline 4 of 24 horsepower, 3-speed sliding pinion tranny, shaft drive, beautiful bodywork, deep red paint, and a deep olive green leather upholstery. He sold the car for $2,500. And for the next 10 years or so, it was used as a taxi cab in and around Coney Island. Charles knew that he was onto something, but didn't have a proper facility to produce cars in. However, he sold office furniture around the country and thus knew many various executives. He asked around and found that a Massachusetts car maker, the Holyoke Automotive Company, was up for sale. Charles believed that Grand Rapids was just too far west to market a top-end luxury car, so the idea of settling in New England made business sense. So in April of 1903, he called up his friends, collected some $600,000 in capital, established the Matheson Motor Car Company Limited, and purchased the Holyoke factory and all that was in it. One of the things that came with his new purchase was a new designer, Charles Grutter, a Swiss engineer who would be Matheson's chief engineer until 1908. He was quite brilliant. Indeed, his engine design of 1901 was one of, if not the, first American engines with overhead valves. He, like Charles, was a stickler for quality and detail, and so, armed with a factory and a full-time engineer, the Matheson cars were underway. Keeping to 24 horsepower engines, Grutter designed a new overhead valve engine for the next year or so of production. These 7-seater touring cars were gorgeous, luxurious, strong, and expensive at some $5,000 apiece. They sold slowly but steadily, being purchased by those Americans of extreme means. In 1905, they made a large 48 horsepower engine and offered a 9-passenger limousine for $7,000. By 1906, Matheson had sold about 100 cars, which doesn't sound like much, but at $5,000 a crack, it adds up. Their reputation as a premier American make of car was growing fast, and they needed to get a bigger factory to meet the oncoming demand. The city of Wilkes-Barre offered Matheson the land and already built factory for a mere $200,000, and thus they moved operations there. Also, at this time, Gruder began to design some much more powerful engines, first to 40 and then to 60 horsepower. At the same time as the new digs were getting set up, two of Matheson's primary stockholders, Charles Singer and Henry Palmer, decided to set up a new company, the Matheson Company of New York, and with it buy all of the cars coming out of Pennsylvania in chassis form, clothe them in New York, and then sell them from there. All was agreed, and now all Mathesons came with custom bodies by companies like J.M. Quinby and Moore and Munger. 1908 saw the departure of Charles Gruder, who was replaced by a Frenchman, L.D. Kennan. Within a few months of his arrival, Kennan had designed the company's first straight six, the Model 17 Silent 6. Though it put out about 50 horsepower, about average for a six at the time, it did so quietly and with lots of torque, and lots of price tag as well. Matheson cars did compete in quite a few races and acquitted quite well, but their extremely high price tag kept them from the hoi polloi, and the company began to get into financial trouble. They went into receivership in 1910 and went completely bankrupt in 1912 after building a total of about 1,000 cars over the company's 9 years of car manufacture. Unfortunately, only a handful survive today. And if you're one of those fortunate people who own one, know that you have a car of prestige. Thanks for watching Vintage Car History, and we'll see you next week. Peace.